Gang hitty in this motherfucker.
Uzis and the M16s, the Maybach to the AMG, I'm drifting. Yeah. Susie to the left of me, I coach her like a referee, a scrimmage. Nigga. Get her off that ecstasy, addicted like a amphetamine, she is. Take you to the back of the building, expose your rage, is you crippin'? A lot of niggas hating on me heavily, you see how I be drippin'. Okay. And I can show you how to shoot, you'll be recruited, but I can't show you how to pivot. 20 in the back with the beam and a double clip, it come extended.
Greetings and salutations. I'm your host, Gabe Morales. Today we're going to cover what I consider to be the top 10 most influential Crip gang members ever. This does not mean they were the strongest or deadliest, or from the biggest Crip sets or most powerful gangs, but they are individuals who I feel made their mark on LA County and beyond. I do not tend to glamorize any of them, but I've always felt it is important to know who started gang violence and historic motives in order to better understand how we can end it. All of these individuals are included in my book, Ending Black and Brown Violence in America. Cody DeJean Monster Scott, later known as Sanyika Shakur, was born on November 13, 1963. His parents, Ernest Scott and Bertie Canada, were both from Houston, Texas. Cody was the fifth of 6 children, including 4 brothers and 2 sisters. His biological father physically and emotionally abused Cody, routinely beating him and showing favoritism towards other siblings. In 1970, Ernest and Bertie Scott divorced. It was at that time in 1972 that Bertie Scott moved her family to a house on West 69th Street and Denker Avenue, in a very rough and gang-infested neighborhood on the west side of South Central. According to Shakur, his very first encounter with street gangs occurred at the age of 10 when he was assaulted by 2 13-year-olds who stole his money. This angered Scott, who was determined not to be punked again. It was also around this time that he began hanging around local tough Stanley Tookie Williams, a leader of the West Side Crips. And in his memoir, Blue Rage, Black Redemption, Tookie recalls several occasions when he and other Crips would smoke PCP and lift weights at his house. According to Williams, Shakur was always present at the house and would watch in awe as gang members would lift weights all day and tell stories about gang fights and shootings. So he felt some guilt and held himself as personally responsible for exposing Shakur to drugs, as Shakur would later become a frequent PCP user and drug addict. Shakur ended up joining the 8-Trade Gangster Crips, and he got his name as a 13-year-old when he head stomped a robbery victim repeatedly in the face until he was disfigured. When police saw the victim, they stated that whoever did it was a monster. So he looked around and told himself, well, that's what I am. Years later, in 1993, he wrote a memoir called Monster, the autobiography of LA gang member, where he is very buffed out, carrying a machine gun on the front cover. In his book, Scott talks about the bitter rivalry between his gang and the Rolling 60 Crips. The 8-Trade Gangsters and Rolling 60s started a war over a girl at a party. Shakur, along with his best friend, Crazy Day Denard, were both deeply involved in this gang war, and they were responsible for shooting and assaulting dozens of members of the Rolling 60s over the years. On December 31st, 1980, a 16-year-old Shakur was ambushed and shot 6 times by 3 adult members of the Rolling 60s after being set up by a group of girls they were dating from his set. On December 31st, 1980, New Year's Eve, 8-Trade Gangsters broke into a gun store on Hawthorne Boulevard. Monster Cody was later ambushed by the Rolling 60s and was hit 5 times. Later that night, Monster's little brother, Kearshawn Little Monster Scott, planned to hit the shooters in retaliation, but could not find them. So they fired on a Rolling 60s party, killing one individual and injuring another. He served almost 16 years for the offense. In the early 1990s, Cody, now calling himself Sanyika Shakur, met rapper Tupac Shakur. The two became good friends, and Shakur mentioned Tupac in the introduction of his book. In 1996, as Sanyika Shakur was on the run from police for a parole violation, he met up with Tupac on the set of the X-rated version of Tupac's music video, How Do You Want It? And this would be the last time Cody would ever see Tupac alive. Shakur claimed to have reformed himself in prison and joined the Republic of New Africa movement, a BGF-like organization. He spent 36 months at San Quentin Prison and 5 years at Pelican Bay State Prison, most of which he spent in solitary confinement. also known as the SHU, or Security Housing Unit. It was there that he converted to Islam. He was released from Pelican Bay after serving 2/3 of his 6-year sentence in August 2012. On July 10th, 2017, Shakur was sent back to prison for an assault conviction out of San Diego County, and he was released on parole on June 6th, 2021, and he was later released on parole. On June 6, 2021, Shakur was found deceased in a tent located in a homeless encampment near Oceanside, California. The cause of his death is still suspicious by many, but it appears that he died from natural causes and not foul play. I viewed videos of Shakur shortly before his death, and it appears to me that he was back on drugs and had a very tragic ending. Nipsey Hussle's real name is Armias Joseph Asagaudam, and he was born on August 15, 1985, in the Crenshaw area of Los Angeles County, to Angelique Smith, an African-American woman, and Dawit Ashkenazi, an Eritrean from Africa. He eventually acquired the rap stage name Nipsey Hussle, which came from his entrepreneurial spirit, as he shined shoes for $250 a person to help pay for school clothes when he was only 11 years old. At the age of 14, he left home and joined the local Rolling 60s neighborhood Crips. In 2002, at the age of 17, Hussle would join Buttervision, a creative multimedia digital guerrilla movement led by Dexter Brown, and was a part of several DVDs put out by that production company. His stage name was a play on the name of well-known comedian Nipsey Russell, as well as in reference to his work ethic, or hustle. In 2004, when he was 19 years old, his father took him and his brother on a 3-month trip to Eritrea. Nipsey Hussle says the trip inspired him to become a community activist with an entrepreneurial spirit. He put out several mixtapes that he often sold out of the trunk of his car at a neighborhood strip mall near the intersection of Slauson Avenue and Crenshaw Boulevards. He had been signed to the cinematic music group of Epic Records. After leaving the Epic record label, he founded his own record company label and experimented with unorthodox sales strategies. In 2013, he founded the Marathon Agency with business partners and opened up several businesses, including a Marathon clothing store in 2017. This store opened at an intersection of the Crenshaw Commercial District and was very important for him because he said he wanted to provide opportunities for people in his neighborhood. He continued his music career also, and his debut studio album, Victory Lap, was released in 2018 to critical acclaim and commercial success, and was even nominated for Best Rap Album at the 61st Grammy Awards in 2019. On March 31st, 2019, Hussle was fatally shot outside of his store by Eric Holder, a 29-year-old man who confronted Hussle earlier that day. It seemed to be an argument over business, but the exact details were never clear. Holder was arrested and charged with murder 2 days later and was found guilty of first-degree murder of Nipsey Hussle on July 6, 2022. Calvin Snoop Dogg Brodus Jr. was born on October 20th, 1971 in Long Beach, California, to Vernell Bernardo and Beverly Tate. Vernell was a Vietnam War veteran, singer, and mail carrier who left the family only 3 months after Calvin's birth. Thus, he was named after his stepfather, Calvin Brodus Sr. As a boy, his parents nicknamed him Snoopy due to his love and likeness of the cartoon character from Peanuts. His mother and stepfather divorced in 1975. When Calvin Brodus Jr. was very young, he began singing and playing piano at a local Baptist church. By the time he was in the 6th grade, he began rapping in school hallways and playgrounds. As he recalls, when I rapped in the hallways at school, I would draw such a big crowd that the principal would think there was a fight going on. It made me begin to realize that I had a gift. I could tell my raps interested people, and it made me interested in myself. And so, due to this experience, he was later professionally known as Snoop Dogg, one of the most popular and successful rappers of all time. He also appeared in many movies and TV shows. As a teenager, many say that Brodus frequently ran into trouble with the law as a member of the Rolling 20s Crips, located on the east side of Long Beach. Although in 1993, he denied that he ever joined that gang and may have just claimed that for street cred. Only you Rolling 20s in Long Beach know the real story. I would be interested in your opinion on that. Nevertheless, after graduating from high school in 1989, he was arrested for possession of cocaine and for the next 3 years was frequently incarcerated, including being locked up at the Wayside Jail. With his 2 cousins, Nate Dogg and Little Half Dead, and a good friend of theirs, Warren G., Snoop recorded homemade tapes, and the four originally called their group 213 after the local area code of Long Beach at the time. In 1992, he was featured on Dr. Dre's debut solo single, Deep Cover, and then on Dr. Dre's solo album, The Chronic. Now, it is well known that the Long Beach Crip have beef for many years with Compton Crips. They don't get along. On Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre album, rap song Nothing But a G Thing, they state Long Beach and Compton. Now you know you're in trouble. So many believe that these were studio gangster lyrics, again for street cred, but did not match reality. Snoop Dogg's debut solo album, Doggy Style, was produced by Dr. Dre and released on Death Row Records in November 1993, and it shot up to #1 on the popular Billboard charts of R&B and hip hop. It sold almost 1 million copies in its first week, and Doggy Style was certified quadruple platinum in 1994 and was most known for featured singles What's My Name and Gin and Juice. After leaving Death Row Records in January 1998, Rhoda signed with No Limit Records, releasing 3 albums, then moved on to several other record labels. In 2012, after a trip to Jamaica, he announced a conversion to Rastafari religion, which believes in smoking a lot of marijuana. So that was a no-brainer for Snoop. But he had a new alias, Snoop Lion. As Snoop Lion, he released a reggae album, Reincarnated, and made a documentary film by the same name about his Jamaican experience in early 2013. His 13th studio album, Bush, was released in 2015 and marked a return of the Snoop Dogg name. In 2018, Snoop announced that he was a born-again Christian and even released a gospel album. In 2022, Snoop acquired his former label, Death Row Records, from MNRK Music Group and released his 19th studio album. It's very interesting to me that he named former convict and drug kingpin Michael Harry O. Harris, who was one of Suge Knight's money-backing partners. Harry O. had been recently pardoned by then-President Donald Trump, and so Snoop named him as Death Row's CCO. Orlando Baby Lane Anderson was born on August 13, 1974, and is and was one of the prime suspects in the murder of rapper Tupac Shakur. Anderson belonged to the Southside Compton Crips. Detective Tim Brennan of the Compton Police Department filed an affidavit naming Anderson as a suspect in the Tupac murder, but Anderson denied any involvement and was never charged as he died before the investigation could be completed. In July of 1996, Anderson was involved in an altercation at the Lakewood Mall where he and his entourage assaulted Trevon Lane, a member of Death Row Records, and snatched his Death Row medallion off his neck. After that, it was rumored that there was a bounty placed on the Compton Crips, especially Orlando Anderson, as the move was seen extremely disrespectful and infuriated Suge Knight, Tupac Shakur, and the rest of Death Row. On September 7th, 1996, only about a month after that incident, and after the Bruce Seldon versus Mike Tyson fight, Trevon Lane spotted Orlando Anderson roaming by himself in the MGM Hotel where the event was held. He told Tupac and the rest of Death Row entourage that it was Anderson who was responsible for snatching his medallion. Tupac can be seen on security camera video running over to Anderson with the rest of the Death Row entourage and throwing the first punch. Anderson then suffered a severe beatdown by the rest of Death Row as he was essentially jumped by 5 men with nobody to help him. But according to an interview by BG Knockout on Vlad TV, Anderson escaped the worst of the beating by managing to cover his face during the attack. This fight occurred only 3 hours before Tupac Shakur's fatal shooting. It is still very suspicious, but Las Vegas police failed to follow up well on the Tupac Shakur shooting. And one of the witnesses, rapper Yaki Gaddafi, was killed only 2 months later. A year later, Tupac Shakur's mother, Afeni Shakur, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Anderson in response to a lawsuit he had filed against Death Row Records, including Suge Knight and Shakur's estate, for being jumped at the MGM. I will do another video on the death of Christopher Biggie Smalls Wallace and how that very likely was tied to the death of Tupac Shakur. But several witnesses' accounts said that 4 men were in a white Cadillac that pulled up alongside a BMW that Suge Knight and Shakur were riding in on the night of the shooting. Several accounts independently reported that Anderson was in the back seat of the Cadillac and shot Shakur by leaning out of the back window. Suge Knight was wounded and Shakur was seriously wounded and later died of his injuries On May 29, 1998, Orlando Baby Lane Anderson died at Martin Luther King Hospital in Willowbrook, California, after he was shot during a gang-related shootout in Compton. And the truth may never be known who killed Tupac. Frederick Baby Gangster Staves started off as a young Compton Crip in the early 1970s and moved up the ranks. By the early 1980s, he got heavily involved in a drug game, and his name was known out on the streets. He was also the president of the Majestics, a lowrider car club whose vehicles have been seen on many issues of Lowrider magazine and at many car shows. They were considered to be the elite black lowrider club by many. Baby Gangster became a Santana Block Compton Crip and served time in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. He also was the creator of the Compton Crips, CC Riders Alliance, that he allegedly started in 1986. He states that he grew up around guys like OG Turtle, who gave him his nickname, Baby Gangster, Killer Wayne, Yogi, and Baby Rob. He idolized these Crips OGs and wanted to be just like them, as they had the ladies, the power, the cars, and the money. He started selling weed in junior high school and then graduated to PCP and then to crack cocaine. By 1985, Baby Gangster and his homeboy, Conrad Kesey, were arrested and booked as they were charged with murdering Rudolph Burks by shooting him in the back with a handgun. A jury found him guilty of voluntary manslaughter, and he was sentenced to 13 years in state prison, of which he did just over 7. In 2001, Baby Gangster was arrested again, but this time on federal drug charges. On the day he was scheduled to go to trial, he pled guilty, along with others on the case, to conspiracy to possess and distribute more than 5 kilos of cocaine and possession and intent to distribute more than 500 grams of narcotics, and was sentenced to 240 months in the BOP. He then wrote several publications, including Gangsta, Some Talked It, I Lived It, which I have not read yet. It seems like there's so many gang books out there, it's hard to keep up. And as I've seen on videos, all these guys tell a slightly different story. But there it is. That concludes my top 10 list of the most influential Crips ever. Again, it should be noted that there should be no glorification of these individuals. As you can see, almost all ended up seeing an early death or long prison terms, and a lot of pain and anguish for them and for their families, and did a lot of damage to the community. I know that there are a lot of other ways to prove your manhood, to prove that you're proud to be black, to provide for your family, and prove that black lives do matter. Until next time, this is Gabe Morales signing off for Gangsters, Cops, and Politicians.
And I can show you how to shoot, you'll be recruited, but I can't show you how to pivot. 20 in the back with the beam and a double clip, it come extended. Okay, don't let me say I'm crazy in a minute. Please don't get your soul evicted.